Welcome to Cognitive Pleasure. We have this idea that our intelligence is some number stamped on us at birth, something fixed, something we can't really change. But what if that entire idea is just wrong?
Here's the core concept we're going to unpack today. Your IQ score isn't a picture of your raw innate potential. No, it's more like the final reading on a massive construction project that's been going on for years. It isn't just born, it's meticulously built.
And that, of course, begs the real question. If intelligence is an outcome, what are the inputs? What are the blueprints, the materials, the conditions that actually assemble it? Well, let's unpack the architecture. Okay, so to get this, we have to start small, at the micro level, with the individual. What exactly is the score we talk about so much? And what's the genetic blueprint that it all starts from? So what an IQ test really tries to measure is something called the G factor, or general intelligence. It's a concept that's been around since 1904 from a psychologist named Charles Spearman. And it's based on a pretty simple observation. People who are good at one kind of cognitive task, say pattern recognition, also tend to be pretty good at others, like memory or reasoning. You can think of G as a rough measure of your brain's overall processing efficiency. Now, we need to be really clear about what this score is and what it isn't. On a large scale, it's actually a pretty powerful predictor of things like academic success or job performance. But, and this is a big but, it says absolutely nothing about your creativity, your wisdom, your character, or your social skills. An IQ score is not and never will be a measure of a person's worth. So where does that initial blueprint come from? Well, famous twin studies show that the heritability of adult IQ is high, somewhere between 50 and 80%. But this is probably the single most misunderstood idea in the whole discussion. It does not mean that 80% of your intelligence is genetic. What it means is that across a population, 80% of the differences we see between people's IQ scores can be explained by differences in their genes. It's not about how much of your pie is genetic, it's about why our pies are all different sizes. And this right here is the critical takeaway. Your genes don't hand you a fixed number. They hand you a potential range. So your genetics might set your potential somewhere between, say, 110 and 130. But whether you end up at the bottom of that range or the top of it, that is determined almost entirely by your environment. The blueprint sets the possibilities, the world builds the reality. So let's zoom out to that first and maybe most crucial environmental layer, our early childhood. This is where the foundation for the entire cognitive structure gets laid down. Let's not forget, the brain is a physical organ. It's built out of the food we eat. And the impact here is just staggering. A simple iodine deficiency during childhood can permanently strip away 10 to 15 IQ points. That alone is the difference between having an average outcome and a borderline intellectual disability. This isn't a subtle effect, it's a seismic one. But it's not just about physical nutrition. It's about cognitive nutrition too. A landmark study by researchers Hart and Risley found something almost unbelievable. By the time they turned 3 years old, a child in a high-income home will have heard, on average, 30 million more words than a child in a low-income home. 30 million. And you can see that chasm right here. And this isn't about fancy tutors or expensive programs. We're talking about conversation, questions, stories. Every word is like another brick being laid in that cognitive foundation. So you can have two kids with similar genetic potential, but by the time they walk into kindergarten, their brains could already be on profoundly different paths. All right, let's pull the camera back again. Beyond the home, we have the wider environment, where all these external forces can act like a constant drag on cognitive development. And what's so fascinating here is how it completely reframes the problem. You see, poverty isn't a reflection of low intelligence. It can actually be a cause of it. The constant stress of worrying about bills or food or rent consumes a huge amount of mental energy, what scientists call cognitive bandwidth. That stress floods the brain with cortisol, which physically gets in the way of learning. And studies show this mental tax is equivalent to losing about 13 IQ points. It temporarily robs you of your full capacity. But on the flip side, education is this incredibly powerful force that builds intelligence. The research on this is causal, it's clear. But the key word here is quality. Just attending a school isn't enough. The quality of the teaching, the resources, the environment, that's what moves the needle. Each year of high-quality education systematically builds cognitive skills, adding somewhere between 1 and 5 points to an IQ score. And then you have the invisible thieves, neurotoxins in our air, in our water. Exposure to lead, even at tiny levels, causes permanent, irreversible brain damage. And we now know that air pollution has a similar devastating effect. These factors are silent architects of inequality, and they disproportionately steal cognitive potential from the most vulnerable communities. So we've gone from the gene to the home to the community. Now it's time for the final zoom out, the macro, generational level. Because if intelligence is built, then it's not just individuals who can change, it's entire nations. This is something called the Flynn effect. From about the 1930s onward, generation after generation all across the developed world scored higher and higher on IQ tests. Think about that. Our genes didn't magically change in 50 years. Our environments did. Better nutrition, more widespread education, and a more complex, cognitively demanding world literally made entire populations smarter. But the story doesn't stop there. In the last few decades, that incredible upward trend has stalled, and in some developed nations, it's even started to reverse. So why is that happening? Well, researchers point directly back to the things we've been talking about: rising inequality, stagnating school systems, the long-term effects of pollution. The Flynn effect is proof that a nation's collective intelligence is a direct outcome of its priorities. Okay, let's bring all of these layers together. We have the genetic blueprint, the childhood foundation, the environmental pressures, and the big societal shifts. All of this gives us a completely new model for how to think about intelligence. So here's the crucial point. These environmental factors aren't some small, minor influence. They are a massive lever. The things that reliably build intelligence are big, systemic, long-term projects. Good nutrition for kids, clean air and water, high-quality education for everyone. The things that don't work are the quick fixes, the brain training apps, the little life hacks. You can't hack your way to a better cognitive foundation. It has to be built brick by brick. This quote just nails the whole argument. The fact that the Flynn effect even exists is the ultimate proof that intelligence isn't some lottery ticket you get when you're born. It's a dynamic capacity that we can cultivate on a massive scale. And this is the mental model to leave with. Intelligence is an architecture. Yes, it has a genetic blueprint, but its final form, its strength, its beauty, that all depends on the quality of the materials and the stability of the environment it's built in. It is not something you simply have, it's something a society decides to build in its people. Subscribe for more. This is Cognitive Pleasure.